On July 21st, 2023, a small team of engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory sent a routine set of commands to a spacecraft nearly 12 billion miles away. It was the kind of command sequence that had been sent successfully hundreds of times before, across nearly 5 decades of operating the same mission. Nothing about it looked unusual. And then, within moments of that command reaching its destination, humanity's most distant working machine went completely silent. Not damaged, not destroyed, just gone in the specific sense that matters most for a spacecraft billions of miles from home. It could no longer hear us, and we could no longer hear it. What happened next became one of the most tense 2-week stretches in the entire history of deep space exploration. And what NASA eventually found when contact was restored revealed exactly how fragile this 50-year-old mission had actually become, and exactly how much was riding on a single 2-degree tilt of a single antenna dish. To understand how something this small could cause something this serious, you have to understand what Voyager 2 actually is at this point in its life. Launched in August of 1977, 16 days before its twin, Voyager 1, it was built to survive a 5-year mission to Jupiter and Saturn. Instead, it kept going, flying past Uranus in 1986 and Neptune in 1989, becoming the only spacecraft in history to visit all 4 giant planets of the outer solar system. Then, it kept going even further, crossing the heliopause in November of 2018 and entering interstellar space, following its twin out beyond the edge of everything the sun's influence touches. By July of 2023, Voyager 2 had been operating continuously for almost 46 years. It was sitting at a distance of roughly 12.3 billion miles from Earth, in the actual space between stars, and every single command sent to it, and every single piece of data sent back from it, had to travel at the speed of light for 18.5 hours, one way, just to make the trip. Communicating with a spacecraft at that distance is nothing like a phone call. There's no live conversation. Every exchange is a monologue followed by a very long, very expensive silence. You send an instruction, you wait roughly a full day, you find out what happened. If something went wrong, you don't get to just try again immediately. You have to wait for the next window, send a correction, and wait another full day to see if that worked. Every operation involving Voyager 2 has always carried this built-in delay, this agonizing gap between action and consequence, and by 2023, after nearly half a century of near-flawless execution, the team managing the mission had learned to live inside that delay. What they had not fully prepared for was a mistake that could sever communication entirely, with no clear timeline for getting it back. Here is what actually happened. As part of a planned routine sequence, the team sent a series of commands intended to make small adjustments to Voyager 2's orientation and operations. Somewhere in that sequence, an error caused the spacecraft's high-gain antenna, the single dish responsible for every bit of data flowing between Voyager 2 and Earth, to physically tilt just 2 degrees away from the direction of our planet. 2 degrees? On a dinner plate held in your hand, 2 degrees would be an adjustment so small you'd barely notice it. At a distance of 12 billion miles, 2 degrees was enough to point that narrow, precisely aimed radio beam completely away from Earth, missing our entire planet by a margin far larger than the beam's actual width. The moment that happened, Voyager 2 lost the ability to receive commands from Mission Control, and Mission Control lost the ability to receive any data at all from Voyager 2. The spacecraft was still flying exactly where it was supposed to be flying. Its instruments, as far as anyone could tell, were presumably still running exactly as they should, but there was no way to confirm any of it, and no way to send it a single instruction to fix itself, because the only channel capable of carrying that instruction was now aimed at empty space. For the engineers at JPL, this was uncharted territory. Voyager's mission planners already knew about a built-in safeguard, a piece of onboard programming that would automatically trigger a full antenna reset, reorienting the dish back toward Earth using the positions of a reference star to recalibrate itself. But that safeguard wasn't scheduled to trigger until mid-October, nearly 3 months away. 3 months of a 50-year-old spacecraft sitting completely out of contact, its condition and safety entirely unknown, was not a situation anyone at NASA was comfortable simply waiting out if there was any other option available. So the team began listening. Even without the ability to send commands or receive actual data, there was a chance that Voyager 2's antenna, even misaimed by 2 degrees, might still be broadcasting a faint, simple carrier signal, essentially an unmodulated radio hum, a heartbeat, detectable by the enormous dishes of NASA's deep space network, even if no usable information could be extracted from it. On August 1st, engineers scanning for exactly that signal found it. A faint carrier wave, present, consistent, and coming from exactly the direction Voyager 2 should have been in. It wasn't data, it wasn't confirmation that anything on board was functioning correctly, but it was proof that the spacecraft itself was still alive, still transmitting something, still out there. That heartbeat changed the calculation. If Voyager 2 was still broadcasting, even faintly, even uselessly, there was a chance it could still receive something too, if whatever was sent was powerful enough to be picked up despite the antenna's misalignment. So the team decided to try something that, as some of the engineers themselves admitted afterward, they weren't even confident would actually work. They planned what came to be informally called an interstellar shout, an attempt to blast a command toward Voyager 2 using far more transmitting power than a normal signal, in the hope that sheer intensity could compensate for the antenna being aimed slightly off target. On August 2nd, NASA's Deep Space Network facility in Canberra, Australia, one of only 3 giant dish complexes on the planet capable of communicating with spacecraft this far from Earth, aimed its most powerful transmitter at the exact point in the sky where Voyager 2 was calculated to be and sent a single amplified instruction: reorient your antenna back toward Earth. That signal then had to travel the entire 12.3 billion mile distance, the speed of light, taking 18.5 hours just to arrive. And then, if it worked, Mission Control would need to wait for Voyager 2's own response signal to make the same 18.5-hour journey back. 37 hours total, from the moment the shout was sent to the moment anyone on Earth would know whether it had actually reached its target, let alone whether the spacecraft had understood and obeyed it. Try to sit inside that 37 hours for a moment. A team of people who have spent years, in some cases entire careers, keeping this one specific machine alive and talking, sends the loudest signal they are capable of producing across the largest distance any human transmission has ever needed to travel with a real chance of being received, aimed at a spacecraft that might already be drifting, might have suffered damage from the initial error, might simply never turn its antenna back the right way, even if the signal does arrive. And then there is nothing left to do but wait. No way to check progress partway through, no partial updates. Just 37 hours of silence, followed by an answer that would either be everything or nothing. At 12:29 in the morning, Eastern Daylight Time on August 4th, 2023, Voyager 2 began transmitting again. Full science data, full telemetry, signals arriving clean and readable, indicating the spacecraft had received the shouted command, successfully reoriented its antenna back toward Earth, and resumed normal operation exactly as if none of the previous 2 weeks had happened at all. And here is where the story becomes genuinely important, not just dramatic, because what NASA found when full contact returned wasn't damage, and it wasn't failure. It was confirmation that, against every reasonable expectation, absolutely nothing had gone wrong with the spacecraft itself during those 2 weeks of silence. Voyager 2 had remained exactly on its expected trajectory the entire time. Its instruments, still collecting data about the interstellar environment it has been traveling through since 2018, had continued operating normally throughout the blackout, uninterrupted, even while nobody on Earth could see a single bit of what it was measuring. The only thing that had actually failed was the antenna's aim, a purely mechanical, purely fixable orientation problem. And once that was corrected, everything picked back up exactly where it left off, as though a nearly 50-year-old machine sitting in the space between stars had simply been waiting patiently for someone to find the right way to say hello again. This was, at the time, described by the mission team as the longest gap in communication in Voyager's entire operating history, a genuine first for a program that had, up to that point, run for 46 consecutive years, without ever losing full contact with either spacecraft for anywhere close to that long. And while the scientific data lost during those 2 weeks amounted to very little in the broader picture, because the interstellar environment Voyager 2 is studying changes on timescales of years and decades rather than days, the operational lesson landed hard. A single routine, previously safe category of command, executed the same way it always had been enough to nearly sever contact with one of only 2 human-made objects ever to operate beyond the edge of our solar system, for as long as 3 months, possibly longer, if that October reset had also failed for any reason. What changed after this wasn't the spacecraft. Voyager 2 kept doing exactly what it had been doing since 1977, moving steadily deeper into interstellar space, its instruments still active, still sending back data about a region of the galaxy no other functioning spacecraft has ever measured directly. What changed was how the people responsible for it now treat every single command they send. Routine stopped meaning safe. A sequence that had worked without incident for decades was proven, in a single afternoon, capable of nearly ending contact with a spacecraft that cannot be repaired, cannot be replaced, and cannot be reached by anything faster than a radio wave taking 18.5 hours to arrive. Every command since has been treated with the understanding that there is no such thing as a truly minor operation when the distances involved make even a 2-degree mistake functionally unrecoverable for months at a time. Voyager 2 is still out there right now, still transmitting, still one of only 2 functioning instruments humanity has ever placed in the space between stars. Its power keeps declining year after year as the plutonium powering its onboard generators steadily decays, and its remaining scientific instruments are being switched off, one at a time, in a carefully sequenced effort to stretch its useful life for as long as the dwindling electricity will allow. But every single day it continues operating. Every fresh batch of data it sends home across that 18-and-a-half-hour gap arrives carrying an unspoken reminder of those 2 weeks in the summer of 2023, when a spacecraft that had survived 4 planetary flybys, the crossing of an entire solar system boundary, and 46 years of continuous operation in the harshest environment humans have ever sent anything into, went briefly, completely silent, because of a 2-degree tilt nobody caught in time. And when it finally answered again, it hadn't just survived. It proved that even after everything it had already been through, there was still one more thing this 50-year-old machine could teach the people running it. That at 12 billion miles, there is no such thing as a small mistake, and there's no such thing as routine ever again. If stories like this, the quiet, nerve-wracking moments behind the headlines that decide whether humanity keeps listening to the edge of the solar system or loses it for good, are what you come here for, stay close, because there is more waiting out there in the silence